Have you ever been laughed at by the one person who promised to believe in you? Not by strangers. Not by critics. But by the person you loved enough to call your husband. People often say that broken dreams hurt. They're wrong. The dreams don't break first. Your heart does. When I married Daniel, I believed love could survive anything. We weren't rich. Our first apartment was so small that if one of us opened the refrigerator, the other had to step aside just to walk through the kitchen. The roof leaked whenever it rained. The heater only worked when it felt generous. Still, every evening we sat on the floor with cheap takeout and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Back then, Daniel used to hold my hand and whisper, "One day we'll have everything." I believed him. I really did. Years passed. Daniel climbed the corporate ladder faster than anyone expected. Promotions came one after another. His suits became more expensive. His watch cost more than our first car. We moved into a beautiful house with marble floors and huge windows. Neighbors admired him. Friends envied him. Everyone said how lucky I was. Maybe I was. Or maybe they only saw the polished front door. They never saw what happened behind it. Underscore 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 underscore. I had always loved baking. Not because I dreamed of becoming famous. Not because I wanted money. I baked because it made people smile. When someone took the first bite of my cinnamon rolls, their eyes always closed for just a second. That little moment. That tiny smile. It made my entire day. Birthdays. Baby showers. School events. Friends constantly asked me to bake cakes. One afternoon, my best friend Emily looked at me while eating another slice of chocolate cake. She put down her fork. "You know." "What?" "You should sell these." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. "Who's going to buy my cakes?" "Everyone. They can buy cheaper ones at the bakery." "They're buying cake. They'd be buying yours." I smiled politely. Then changed the subject. But her words stayed with me. 4 days. Weeks. Months. One evening, after dinner, I finally gathered enough courage. Daniel sat in the living room scrolling through financial reports on his laptop. I sat beside him. "I've been thinking." He didn't look up. "I want to start a homemade dessert business." Silence. A few seconds later. He laughed. Not a little laugh. The kind that makes someone wipe tears from their eyes. He leaned back on the couch. "You?" I forced a smile. "Yes. You want to compete with professional bakeries?" "I don't want a bakery. I just want to bake from home." Another laugh. Louder this time. "You can't be serious." "I am." He finally closed his laptop. "You know why businesses fail?" "No." "Because people confuse hobbies with careers." His words landed like stones. I just thought. He interrupted me. "You bake cookies for birthday parties. That doesn't make you an entrepreneur." I wasn't saying I'd become rich. He smiled. That smile. The one that never reached his eyes. "I know. You won't." That night I cried quietly in the bathroom. Not because he said no. Because he never even considered that I might succeed. A week later Emily called. "So? So what? Did you tell Daniel?" "Yes." "And?" I stayed silent. She already knew. "Oh. I think he's right." "No. I don't know anything about business. You know how to make people happy." That's enough to start. I don't even have a logo. Emily laughed. You don't need a logo. You need your first customer. The next morning someone knocked on my door. Mrs. Wilson from next door. My granddaughter's birthday is Saturday. I was wondering. She hesitated. Would you make her unicorn cake? I smiled. Of course. How much? I froze. Money? I had never charged anyone before. Mrs. Wilson smiled kindly. Don't underprice yourself. After she left, I searched online for cake prices. Everything seemed expensive. Too expensive. Daniel walked into the kitchen. What are you doing? Looking at cake prices. He glanced at the screen. Then chuckled. You actually think people will pay that? I don't know. They won't. Saturday arrived. I spent 12 straight hours making that cake. Every flower. Every swirl. Every tiny decoration. Done by hand. When Mrs. Wilson picked it up, she gasped. Oh my goodness. She kept turning it around. I almost don't want to cut it. I laughed. You have to. The next morning she called me. You ruined the party. My heart stopped. I'm so sorry. No. She laughed. Everyone wanted another slice. The children cried because there wasn't enough. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Then she said something I'll never forget. I already gave your number to 6 mothers. 6. By evening, I had 9 orders. By Monday, 15. By Friday, 23. I stared at my notebook. My hands shook. Could this actually work? When Daniel came home, I excitedly showed him the list. Look. He barely glanced at it. So? I have 23 orders. For this month. He loosened his tie. Enjoy it while it lasts. What does that mean? Friends always support each other at first. They'll get bored. Then he walked upstairs, leaving me standing there, holding the notebook, wondering why strangers believed in me more than my own husband. And deep inside, a tiny voice whispered something I had never dared to believe before. Maybe. Just maybe. He was wrong. What do you do when the whole world starts believing in you, except the one person whose opinion still has the power to break your heart? Success doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes quietly. One phone call. One recommendation. One stranger saying, I heard you're the best. And before you realize it, your kitchen becomes too small for your dreams. The following Monday, I woke up before sunrise. The house was silent. I cleaned as fast as I could. That's not the point. Then what is? Our home doesn't feel like a home anymore. His words stung. I'll organize everything better. You should. Then he walked upstairs. No smile. No good job. Nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was letting everything get out of control. Maybe I should stop before things became worse. Then my phone buzzed. A message from a customer. My son has severe allergies. You made him the first birthday cake he could safely eat. He smiled all day. Thank you for making him feel like every other child. I read it again. And again. Tears rolled down my face. It wasn't about cake. It never had been. It was about moments. About memories. About making people feel seen. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. Within 3 months, my social media page had over 10,000 followers. People I had never met shared photos of my desserts. One local food blogger posted a picture of my strawberry shortcake. The caption read, Hidden in a quiet neighborhood is the most incredible homemade bakery you'll ever taste. By evening, my inbox exploded. Orders. Questions. Wedding inquiries. Corporate events. My phone barely stopped ringing. I laughed every time it buzzed. Emily laughed even harder. I told you. I know. I literally told you. You did. And? You were right. She raised both hands like she'd won an award. I'll be accepting thank you cakes for the rest of my life. Business became so busy that I hired my first helper. Her name was Sophia. She was a single mother with a 7-year-old son. During the interview she looked terrified. I've never worked in a bakery. Neither have I. She looked confused. What? I've only worked in my own kitchen. She smiled. I can learn. I know you can. She hugged me before she even accepted the job. Thank you. No. I smiled. Thank you. One afternoon Daniel came home early. Sophia was washing dishes. Emily was packaging cookies. I was decorating a wedding cake. Daniel stood frozen. What is this? I looked up. Oh. I hired someone. You hired someone? I couldn't manage all the orders alone. His face darkened. Without asking me? I put down my piping bag. I used my own earnings. That's not the point. Then what is the point? You turned my house into your company. Our house. He looked away. I don't like strangers here. Sophia isn't a stranger. She works here. Exactly. His voice became colder. This is getting ridiculous. Emily quietly picked up her purse. I'll come back tomorrow. She understood. She always understood. After everyone left, the silence became unbearable. Daniel crossed his arms. So what's next? A storefront? I don't know. A warehouse? I haven't thought that far. A factory? I stared at him. Why does every success of mine sound like a problem to you? He looked shocked. Then he laughed. You think this is success? This is temporary. You don't know that. I do. How? Because businesses like this always disappear. You don't believe in me. I believe in reality. Those words echoed through the kitchen long after he'd gone upstairs. A few days later, I attended my first local artisan market. I almost cancelled. I kept imagining no one stopping by. No one buying anything. Emily refused to let me quit. You've spent 3 days baking. If nobody comes, they will. You don't know that. She smiled. I know people. When we arrived, dozens of vendors were already setting up. Beautiful handmade candles. Jewelry. Paintings. Fresh flowers. I suddenly felt very small. My desserts don't belong here. Emily grabbed my shoulders. They absolutely do. The market opened. 5 minutes passed. Nobody came. 10 minutes. Still nothing. I swallowed hard. I knew it. Then a little girl stopped in front of the table. She pointed at a cupcake shaped like a sunflower. Mommy. It's smiling. Her mother laughed. You're right. She bought 2 cupcakes. Then another customer walked over. Then another. Then another. Within 2 hours, every single dessert was sold. Even the samples. A woman in an elegant navy suit approached just as we were packing up. Are you Mrs. Carter? Yes. She handed me a business card. I own 3 boutique hotels. My heart skipped. We've been looking for someone to create signature desserts for our guests. I stared at the card. I'd love to discuss a partnership. I couldn't speak. Emily answered for me. We'd be honored. The woman smiled. I'll call you Monday. As she walked away, Emily grabbed both of my hands and screamed so loudly that nearby vendors turned to look. We're going to need a bigger kitchen. For the first time, I laughed so hard that tears streamed down my face. But across town, sitting in his glass office high above the city, Daniel had no idea that while he was closing million-dollar business deals, the homemade business he kept calling just a hobby had just received the opportunity that would change both of our lives forever. The hardest part of becoming successful isn't learning how to build something. It's realizing that the people who once laughed at your dreams begin feeling threatened by them. Sometimes they don't say it directly. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they clap. And sometimes they slowly become strangers while still sleeping beside you every night. The business card stayed on my bedside table all weekend. Every time I walked past it, I picked it up, read the company's name, smiled, and carefully placed it back. It felt unreal. I kept wondering if Monday would come and no one would call. Maybe the woman had changed her mind. Maybe she'd found someone better. Maybe she'd simply forgotten me. Daniel noticed the card while getting ready for work. What's this? Oh. A hotel owner asked if I'd be interested in making desserts for her guests. He barely looked at it. They're probably talking to 10 other bakers. Maybe. I wouldn't get too excited. He straightened his tie in the mirror. People in business make promises they never keep. He kissed my forehead quickly before leaving. It was a habit now. Not affection. Just routine. The front door closed. I looked at the card again. For a moment, his words almost convinced me not to answer if she called. Almost. At exactly 9:17 that morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. My hands trembled as I answered. Hello? Good morning, is this Claire Carter? Yes. This is Olivia from Willow Crest Boutique Hotels. I met you at the artisan market. I remember. I've been thinking about your desserts all weekend. I laughed softly. I hope that's a good thing. It absolutely is. We'd like to begin with a 3-month trial. I nearly dropped the phone. A trial? Yes. We'll need desserts delivered to all 3 of our locations every morning. I leaned against the kitchen counter. I'm sorry. I think I heard you correctly, but could you repeat that? She laughed. We'd like you to become our dessert supplier. I covered my mouth. The room blurred. Tears rolled down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes. I'd love to. Wonderful. We'll send the contract this afternoon. After hanging up, I stood there in complete silence. Then I screamed. Not because I had forgotten how to act like an adult. Because for the first time in years, someone had chosen me. Not because I was Daniel's wife. Not because I was doing them a favor. But because they believed in my work. Emily arrived 20 minutes later. She found me sitting on the kitchen floor. Why are you crying? I handed her the contract. She read the first page. Then the second. Then she looked at me. No. I nodded. No. I nodded again. She shrieked so loudly that the neighbor's dog started barking. Then she pulled me into the tightest hug imaginable. I knew it. I knew this day would come. I didn't. I did. You always believed in me. She smiled through watery eyes. Because you gave everyone else reasons to smile. It was only a matter of time before the world smiled back. The contract changed everything. I needed larger ovens. Commercial refrigerators. Better equipment. More storage. And more people. Sophia could no longer handle everything with me. Within a month, I hired 4 additional employees. Maria had spent years caring for her sick husband before he passed away. Jacob had been laid off after 15 years at the same company. Nina was fresh out of culinary school and couldn't find anyone willing to give her experience. Each person walked through my door carrying disappointment. Each one left smiling at the end of the first week. Every Friday afternoon, we all sat together and shared coffee before going home. No titles. No fancy offices. No executive meetings. Just people. Talking. Laughing. Sharing homemade cookies while the ovens cooled. One afternoon Jacob looked around the kitchen. You know what's strange? What? This is the first job where nobody is afraid to make mistakes. I smiled. That's because mistakes are fixable. You don't yell. I've been yelled at enough. He nodded quietly. I think we all have. Business continued growing faster than I could have imagined. The local newspaper published a story about us. Homemade dreams rise from a neighborhood kitchen. Television stations called asking for interviews. A radio host invited me to tell my story. Customers traveled from other cities just to taste our desserts. Every day brought another surprise. Every night brought another challenge. I worked harder than ever before. But somehow, I felt lighter. Daniel, however, seemed heavier. He stayed at work later. He answered fewer questions. Sometimes we ate dinner without speaking at all. One evening I decided to surprise him. His favorite meal. Roast chicken. Garlic potatoes. Fresh bread. Candles on the table. He walked in an hour late. Still on the phone. He ended the call, loosened his tie, and sat down. This smells nice. I thought we could finally have dinner together. He took one bite. It's good. Silence. I smiled. I have some news. He kept eating. The hotel contract has doubled. They want desserts for 6 locations now. He nodded without looking up. Congratulations. That was it. One word. One tiny sentence. The excitement I'd been carrying all day disappeared like smoke. I was hoping you'd ask how I did it. He looked confused. Why? Because you're my husband. I assumed everything went well. I wanted to tell you. You just did. No. I whispered. I wanted you to care. His fork stopped moving. He sighed. Claire. What? You've become obsessed. Obsessed? Every conversation is about cakes. Because they're changing our lives. Our lives were already fine. Were they? What does that mean? I looked around our beautiful dining room. The expensive furniture. The designer lights. The spotless walls. This house has everything except joy. He stared at me. That's unfair. Is it? I worked for everything here. I know. And I appreciated every sacrifice. I know. But somewhere along the way, my voice cracked. You stopped celebrating anything that made me happy. For several long seconds. Neither of us spoke. Finally he pushed his plate away. I have an early meeting. Then he walked upstairs. Leaving his dinner unfinished. Leaving me sitting alone at a table set for 2. A few weeks later, something happened that neither of us expected. Daniel's company announced massive restructuring. Rumors spread through the office. Departments were being merged. Executives were disappearing overnight. One evening he came home unusually quiet. Everything okay? He nodded. Just tired. But he wasn't tired. He was worried. I could see it in his eyes. The confident man who once believed nothing could shake him now stared at the floor longer than he looked at people. I wanted to ask. I wanted to comfort him. Instead, I simply made him tea and placed it beside him. He whispered, "Thanks." It was the gentlest thing he'd said to me in months. 2 days later, his phone rang during breakfast. He answered. Listened. Didn't say a word. Then quietly placed the phone back on the table. I looked at him. His face had gone completely pale. "Daniel?" He swallowed hard. "My position." He couldn't finish. "What happened?" "They eliminated it." The room fell silent. After 22 years. The company had let him go. He sat there staring into nothing, as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. For the first time since I'd known him, the man who believed success made a person valuable suddenly had no job. And he had no idea that the wife whose homemade dream he once mocked was about to become the only reason their future would remain standing. The moment life humbles someone, you discover who they truly are. Some people become kinder. Some become wiser. And some become so consumed by pride that they would rather destroy the person standing beside them than admit they need help. I prayed Daniel would become the first kind. I had no idea he was about to become the third. The morning after Daniel lost his job, the house felt unfamiliar. Usually, he left before 7. The sound of the garage door, the smell of his coffee, his hurried footsteps down the hallway, those little routines had become part of the house itself. Now, he sat in the living room wearing sweatpants. The television was on, but he wasn't watching it. His coffee had gone cold. He just stared at the blank wall. I quietly placed fresh pancakes on the table. "I made your favorite." He looked up. "Thanks." That single word sounded heavier than any speech. I sat across from him. "You'll find something." He gave a hollow smile. "I'm 52. So? Companies want younger executives. They want experience too. They say they do." He looked down at his hands. "They don't." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I reached across the table and gently held his hand. "We'll get through this." He didn't pull away. But he didn't hold my hand back either. Over the next few weeks, Daniel applied everywhere. Every morning he dressed in a suit. Every afternoon he came home carrying the same leather briefcase. Every evening he looked a little more defeated. I had another interview. "How did it go?" "They said they'll let me know." But they never did. One rejection. Then another. Then another. The confident man who once walked into boardrooms with his head held high now spent hours staring at job websites. Sometimes I caught him reading old performance awards. As if they might somehow change the present. Meanwhile, my business had outgrown the house completely. We had signed contracts with 2 more hotel chains. A wedding planner booked us for 18 weddings in one season. Local cafes wanted our pastries. A nearby grocery store asked to carry our cookies. The little whiteboard in my kitchen had been replaced by scheduling software because there were simply too many orders to manage by hand. One afternoon Emily looked around the kitchen and laughed. "Remember when 23 orders felt impossible?" I laughed too. I thought I was going to faint. "You almost did." "I definitely did." "And now?" I smiled. "We're making more desserts in one day than I made that entire first month." Emily shook her head. "I'm never getting tired of watching this." A few days later, I gathered everyone together. Sophia. Jacob. Maria. Nina. Emily. "I have something to tell you." They all looked nervous. "Please don't tell us you're closing." Jacob joked. I laughed. "Actually." I slid a folder onto the table. "We're buying a building." Silence. Then 5 different voices shouted at once. "What? No way. Seriously? You did it." Maria burst into tears before I could say another word. I've worked in places where owners celebrated profits. She wiped her eyes. This is the first place where I feel like we're celebrating each other. I walked over and hugged her. We built this together. No. She whispered. You believed in us when nobody else did. One by one, they all hugged me. The kitchen echoed with laughter. Someone turned on music. Jacob somehow convinced everyone to dance while trays of cookies cooled on the racks. For a few beautiful minutes, work disappeared. It simply felt like family. That evening I rushed home, unable to contain my excitement. Daniel was sitting on the back porch. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink. I have amazing news. He looked up slowly. What happened? We bought a commercial building. He blinked. You bought one? I signed the papers today. With whose approval? I frowned. What? You spent that much money. I earned that money. You're married. So are you. You should have discussed it with me. I wanted to. But every time I tried to talk about the business, I stopped. He already knew. He looked away. I didn't think it would get this far. I know. His jaw tightened. So now what? We renovate. Hire more staff. Expand. He let out a dry laugh. Congratulations. There it was again. That word. Always spoken like a stranger. Never like a husband. Weeks passed. The building slowly transformed. Fresh paint. New ovens. Industrial mixers. Beautiful display cases. Large windows that let in warm morning sunlight. The sign above the entrance read, Claire's Kitchen. Simple. Nothing fancy. Just my name. When I first saw it installed, I cried. Emily squeezed my shoulder. You earned every letter. The grand opening was announced online. Within hours, hundreds of people shared the post. Customers commented things like, I've waited months for this. Congratulations. Your desserts got me through chemotherapy. Your cakes made my daughter's wedding unforgettable. You deserve this. I read every single comment. Every one. Some made me laugh. Some made me cry. Every one reminded me why I had started. Opening day arrived. People lined up before sunrise. I looked out the window and couldn't believe my eyes. Families. Children. Older couples. Young students. People holding flowers. One little boy pressed his face against the glass. Mom. The cookie lady. I laughed so hard I nearly smudged the frosting on the cake I was decorating. When we unlocked the doors, the line stretched halfway down the street. Customers applauded as they walked in. One elderly woman hugged me without saying a word. Another customer brought homemade jam as a gift. Someone handed me a handwritten card. Inside it simply read, Thank you for reminding us that kindness still exists. I couldn't finish reading it. My eyes blurred with tears. By lunchtime, every shelf was nearly empty. Reporters arrived. Television cameras followed. The mayor even stopped by to congratulate us. One reporter smiled at me. How does it feel to become one of the fastest-growing small businesses in the state? I looked around at my team. Sophia helping an elderly customer. Jacob making children laugh while decorating cupcakes. Maria wrapping cookies with the same care she'd use for a birthday gift. Emily waving from behind the register. Then I answered honestly. It feels like coming home. That evening, exhausted but happier than I had ever been, I returned home carrying a small cake. Daniel was sitting in the dark. No lights. No television. Nothing. I brought your favorite. He didn't move. They showed your interview today. I smiled. You saw it? I couldn't avoid it. I sat beside him. You know, I always wished you'd be there for moments like this. He finally looked at me. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not sadness. Not anger. Something colder. I never imagined my wife would become more successful than me. The words hit harder than any insult he'd ever spoken. I searched his face, hoping he was joking. He wasn't. I whispered. This was never a competition. He stood up. For you, maybe. Then he walked upstairs. I remained on the couch, staring at the untouched cake in my hands. Outside, people were still celebrating the opening of Claire's kitchen. Inside my own home, my marriage was quietly falling apart. And I was about to discover that losing his job hadn't broken Daniel. It had broken his pride. And pride can make good people do terrible things. Sometimes the person who couldn't stop laughing at your dream becomes the person most desperate to take it away. Not because they need it. Because they can't bear to watch you succeed without them. I used to think failure revealed a person's character. I was wrong. Success does. Especially when it belongs to someone else. A week after the grand opening, I woke before sunrise, as I always did. The bakery opened at 6. Fresh bread needed time to rise. Croissants needed their final proof. Cookies had to be out of the oven before the first customers walked in. I quietly slipped out of bed. Daniel was still asleep. Or so I thought. As I reached the bedroom door, he spoke without opening his eyes. So, you're leaving already? I have to. You always have to. I'll be home for dinner. You said that yesterday. I know. You came home after 9. There was a problem with one of the ovens. There always seems to be a problem. His words weren't loud. They were tired. And somehow that hurt even more. I'm trying to build something. He finally opened his eyes. And what about us? The question lingered in the room long after I left. Business had become a whirlwind. The bakery was packed every day. By noon, the display shelves looked almost empty. People traveled from neighboring towns. Food bloggers waited outside before opening. Children pressed their noses against the glass to watch cupcakes being decorated. One Saturday morning, an elderly man entered carrying a faded photograph. He placed it gently on the counter. Can you make this cake? I picked up the picture. It showed a small round strawberry cake. Simple. Elegant. My wife baked this every year. He smiled sadly. She passed away last winter. The bakery grew quiet. I want one more birthday with her cake. I looked into his eyes. You'll have it. 2 days later, he returned. When he opened the box, he didn't say a single word. He just touched the frosting with trembling fingers. It looks exactly the same. His voice broke. Thank you. He hugged me before leaving. Half the bakery was wiping away tears. Even Jacob disappeared into the kitchen pretending to check the ovens. Moments like that reminded me why I never cared about becoming rich. Money paid the bills. But memories. Memories fed the soul. That evening I returned home with a smile that refused to leave my face. I have something to show you. Daniel looked up from his laptop. What? I handed him an envelope. Inside was the financial report from the bakery. He glanced at it casually. Then looked again. His eyebrows shot upward. These numbers. They're real. He flipped through the pages. You made this. In 1 month? I nodded. He became strangely quiet. Very quiet. Then he smiled. For the first time in years. My heart leaped. Maybe this was the moment everything would finally change. I'm proud of you. The words were everything I'd wanted to hear. Everything. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you. He stood, walked around the table, and hugged me. A real hug. Not out of habit. Not because it was expected. For the first time in what felt like forever. He held me close. I closed my eyes. Maybe we'd finally found our way back to each other. For the next few weeks, Daniel became surprisingly involved. He asked questions. How many employees now? 12. What's your biggest expense? Ingredients. What are your profit margins? I've never really calculated them that way. You should. He offered advice. Some of it was actually helpful. He reorganized a few spreadsheets. Suggested a better inventory system. Helped compare supplier prices. The bakery became slightly more efficient. I started believing he had accepted my success. Emily wasn't convinced. One afternoon, while arranging cupcakes in the display case, she quietly asked, "Do you trust him?" I looked confused. Of course. She frowned. I don't know. What do you mean? He's changed too quickly. People can change. They can. She hesitated. I just hope he's changing for the right reasons. I laughed softly. You worry too much. She forced a smile. I hope I do. 3 months later, a national television network contacted us. They wanted to feature Claire's Kitchen in a program highlighting inspiring small businesses. The entire team screamed when we received the email. Jacob danced with a rolling pin. Maria cried. Sophia called her son from the kitchen. You have to watch TV next week. The cameras arrived on Tuesday. They filmed everything. The ovens. The decorating tables. The customers. The laughter. The little handwritten notes we tucked into birthday cake boxes. Toward the end of the interview, the host asked, "Who inspired you to start this journey?" I smiled. My best friend Emily never stopped believing in me. Emily immediately burst into tears. The host laughed. And your husband? I paused. For just a second. He taught me something important. What was that? That sometimes the biggest obstacle standing between you and your dream isn't a lack of talent. It's a lack of belief. The studio grew quiet. I decided I would believe in myself until someone else did. The host nodded slowly. I think millions of people need to hear that. The episode aired nationwide. The response was overwhelming. Orders flooded in from across the country. Franchise offers began arriving. Investors requested meetings. Magazines wanted interviews. People recognized me in grocery stores. Children asked for selfies. It all felt surreal. Then, everything changed. Underscore 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 underscore. One Friday afternoon, while reviewing paperwork in my office, Sophia knocked gently. You have a visitor. I'm not expecting anyone. He says it's urgent. A man in a gray suit entered. He introduced himself as an attorney. I'm sorry to bother you. He placed several documents on my desk. I believe you should see these. I frowned. What are they? He slid the first page toward me. My smile disappeared. It was an application. For a trademark. Not under my name. Under Daniel's. My hands began to shake. There must be some mistake. I'm afraid there isn't. I flipped through more papers. My heart pounded harder with every page. He had filed paperwork claiming ownership of the Claire's Kitchen brand. There were additional documents. Draft contracts. business restructuring proposals. Even correspondence suggesting that he intended to present himself as the company's founder in future investment negotiations. I stared at the pages, unable to breathe. This can't be right. The attorney looked genuinely sympathetic. I represent one of the investors. He became concerned after noticing inconsistencies. He thought you deserved to know before signing anything. The room spun. Every happy memory from the past few months suddenly felt different. The financial questions. The spreadsheets. The advice. The sudden kindness. The hugs. The smiles. It hadn't been acceptance. It had been preparation. Preparation to take everything. I drove home in silence. The papers rested on the passenger seat. Each red traffic light felt like an eternity. When I walked through the front door, Daniel looked up from the living room. "You're home early." I placed the documents on the coffee table. "I have one question." He glanced at the papers. His expression changed instantly. Then, he leaned back in his chair. Almost casually. "What do you want to know?" I stared at the man I had loved for 26 years. The man who had promised to stand beside me through everything. The man who once laughed at my dream. And now? He didn't even look ashamed. My voice trembled as I asked. "Were you ever proud of me? Or were you just waiting for the right moment to steal what I built?" Daniel slowly stood. He looked directly into my eyes. And the answer he gave shattered the last piece of my heart that still believed our marriage could be saved. The cruelest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who know exactly where your heart is, because you placed it in their hands yourself. There was a time when I believed losing a business would destroy me. Standing in my living room, staring at my husband of 26 years, I realized something much worse. I had almost lost myself trying to earn the approval of someone who had already decided I would never be enough. Daniel looked at the documents on the coffee table. Then he looked back at me. He didn't deny them. He didn't apologize. Instead, he let out a long sigh, as though he were the one carrying the burden. "You don't understand business, Claire." I stared at him in disbelief. "I understand honesty." He shook his head. "No, you understand baking. This company has become too valuable to be run emotionally." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So your solution was to put your own name on it?" "I was protecting it." "Protecting it? From who?" "You?" He folded his arms. "I have decades of executive experience. You have recipes." The words landed like ice. For a long moment, I simply looked at him. Then I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because I suddenly understood everything. Every insult. Every sarcastic smile. Every time he called my dream just a hobby. He had never underestimated my business. He had underestimated me. And when the business succeeded, he convinced himself it belonged to someone like him. Not someone like me. "You know what hurts the most?" I asked quietly. "It isn't the paperwork. It isn't the trademark. It isn't even the lies." He frowned. "It's that for 26 years. I kept trying to become someone you'd finally be proud of." A tear slipped down my cheek. "And today I realized. I never needed your permission." The room fell silent. For the first time, Daniel had no answer. The next morning, I met with my attorney. Fortunately, every original recipe, business license, financial record, tax filing, supplier contract, employee agreement, and lease had been created in my name from the very beginning. Daniel had tried to position himself for future control. But legally, he had never owned the business. The attorney smiled after reviewing everything. "He underestimated you." I smiled sadly. "No. He underestimated kindness." The fraudulent filings were withdrawn. The investors chose to continue working directly with me. One of them left during the meeting. We invest in founders, not opportunists. Another added, your integrity is worth more than any spreadsheet. For the first time in months, I walked out of a meeting without feeling like I had to prove anything. That evening, I called the entire bakery team together after closing. Everyone sensed something was wrong. Maria spoke first. Is everything okay? I looked around the room. At the people who had become my second family. I have some difficult news. Their smiles faded. My marriage is ending. Silence filled the bakery. Then Sophia walked around the counter and hugged me. Without saying a word. Jacob followed. Then Maria. Then Nina. Even Emily, who had promised herself she wouldn't cry, completely failed. She buried her face in my shoulder. I hate seeing you hurt. I smiled through tears. I'm going to be okay. You don't have to be strong today. Emily whispered. We'll be strong for you. Those words healed something inside me that years of compliments never could. The divorce wasn't easy. 26 years of memories don't fit neatly into legal boxes. There were arguments, meetings, signatures, long afternoons that left me emotionally exhausted. One day, as we left the courthouse, Daniel stopped me in the parking lot. You really won't reconsider? I looked at him. Not with anger. Not with hatred. Simply with clarity. I spent years begging you to believe in me. You laughed. I spent years hoping you'd celebrate me. You couldn't. I finally became someone I was proud of. And somehow, you hated me for it. He lowered his head. I made mistakes. You made choices. They're different. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I smiled gently. I truly hope you find peace. And I walked away. This time, I didn't look back. A year later, Claire's kitchen had grown beyond anything I had ever imagined. 5 beautiful locations. More than 100 employees. Scholarships for aspiring pastry students who couldn't afford culinary school. Every Christmas, we delivered thousands of desserts to nursing homes, homeless shelters, children's hospitals, and families who simply couldn't afford a holiday meal. People often asked me, why give away so much? I always answered the same way. Because someone once gave me a chance. And kindness grows best when it's shared. One quiet Tuesday afternoon, a familiar figure walked into the original bakery. I recognized him immediately. Daniel. He looked older. His shoulders were lower. The confidence that once filled every room had disappeared. He waited patiently until the line was gone. Then he approached the counter. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I smiled politely. Hello, Daniel. I've been applying for jobs. He gave a tired laugh. No one seems interested. I'm sorry. I deserved that. No. I shook my head. I wouldn't wish failure on anyone. He looked around the bakery. Employees laughed together while decorating cookies. Customers chatted over coffee. Children watched cupcakes being frosted through the glass. The place felt alive. It always felt different here. He whispered. Why? Because people smile. I nodded. They do. He looked at me. I never understood. What? Why people loved your business so much. I smiled. It was never about cakes. He waited. It was about making people feel important. His eyes filled with tears. I wish I had made you feel that way. For the first time in years. His voice carried no pride. Only regret. I reached into the display case and placed his favorite cinnamon roll into a small white box. He instinctively reached for his wallet. I gently stopped him. It's on the house. He looked at me. I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not. I smiled softly. But kindness isn't earned. It's chosen. He lowered his head. Thank you. As he walked toward the door, he paused. Without turning around, he quietly said, "You built something extraordinary. I should have said that a long time ago." Then he stepped outside and disappeared into the afternoon crowd. Closing time came. The employees locked the doors. The ovens cooled. The bakery became quiet once more. I walked over to the large front window and looked at the sign glowing warmly against the evening sky. Claire's Kitchen. Years ago, I thought success meant proving my husband wrong. I couldn't have been more mistaken. Success wasn't becoming richer than him. Or more famous. Or owning more buildings. Success was waking up every morning excited to do work that brought joy to other people. Success was creating jobs for those who had lost hope. Success was hearing children laugh over birthday cakes. Success was watching strangers become family. And perhaps the greatest success of all was finally believing in myself, even when the person closest to me never did. Because the sweetest things in life are never measured by money. They're measured by the lives they touch. And every loaf of bread, every birthday cake, every handwritten note, and every smile that left Claire's Kitchen carried the same simple recipe. A little flour. A little patience. And a heart that refused to stop believing.